On the 16th of March 2021, Dr. Daniel Crosby, a psychologist and behavioural finance expert, posted this tweet. With this accompanying graphic, 23 essential money lessons. In this video, I'm giving my take on each lesson one at a time. Hey there, if you're new here, my name's Hugh and I'm based in the UK and I've been helping people with their money since 1999. Right, let's get into the video. The Joneses aren't as rich or as happy as you think they are. The problem with social media is that we're forced to compare ourselves. We don't want to, but it's inevitable. But the issue with comparing ourselves has always been there, and there's absolutely no benefit, ever. You should only compare yourself to you yesterday. But comparisons and trying to keep up is why we spend money we don't have on buying stuff we don't need to impress people we don't even like. Other people only show us their outside, so we're forced to compare how we're feeling on the inside with the external projection of others. And here's the other thing, you're comparing their priority order with yours. That's crazy, they are not you. I remember a client asking in a judgmental manner why I drove the car I did. I explained I needed an estate car for the children's activities and the dog. Now, I'm not a car person. As long as it's comfortable and reliably gets me from A to B, that's enough. And I don't like to borrow money to purchase a depreciating asset. I prefer to deploy my wealth for other purposes that carry more meaning for me. A lump of metal on my driveway does not deliver meaning into my life. They got it. My priority order was different to theirs. What made them happy didn't float my boat. Turns out they loved their car, but it was costing a fortune. They had no way to repay the balloon payment in 2 years' time. Fur coat, no knickers. The Joneses aren't as happy or as rich as you think they are. The more complicated the investment advice, the less useful it is. An industry, any industry, manufactures products for sale at a profit. The financial services industry is no different. One of the ways the financial services industry does this is to make things unnecessarily complex. That way, you need a clever professional to make sense of it all. There is a direct correlation with complexity and charges. There is also an inverse relationship between charges and investment return. By inference, complexity reduces returns. But it doesn't need to be this way. Simple works just fine for most people. Complicated works for the industry at the expense of most people. The more complicated the investment advice, the less useful it is. Get rich quick and get poor quick are two sides of the same coin. Can we agree that risk and return are related? The more risk, the higher the expected return. This is to make sure the investor, you, is compensated for taking the investment risk. Make sense? If there's low risk investment offering 10% returns, and I've seen such adverts online, and the return of cash is a long way below that, then something's not quite right. Alarm bells should be ringing loudly. A 10% annual return is high compared to a 2 or 3% return on cash in the bank, which is low risk. In a high inflation environment, cash is complicated when it comes to risks, but that's for another video. High return equals high risk. Remember that risk and return are related. And NFTs, remember them exactly. Get rich quick and get poor quick are two sides of the same coin. Time is a scarcer resource than money. You can't make more time, but you can always make more money. You can do some work, sell some stuff, or just spend less. But time doesn't work like that. Once you've spent time doing something, you don't get to spend it again. It's gone, and it's gone forever. And time goes quick. We all know that we're going to die, but most of us don't think it will happen for a good while. So we put off doing important stuff because we've got plenty of time. After all, we're not going to die anytime soon. But sadly, for some, that's just not true. The only day we're guaranteed to be alive is today. We all think we'll wake up tomorrow, but not everyone will. You owe it to yourself and all the people who are no longer around to make the most of the time you've got left on the planet. Time is a scarcer resource than money. Ask about anything you don't understand. Your money is your responsibility. Understanding your financial life is also your responsibility. You don't need to understand how the internal combustion engine works to drive a car, but you do have to know how to drive a car to drive a car. You owe it to yourself to be the driver of your financial life, not a passenger. Ask about anything you don't understand. A house is a place to live, not an investment. Your house is not your pension. nor is it an investment. Your house is somewhere you live. It's your home. An investment pays you an income, dividends, interest, a coupon. Your house doesn't. It costs you money. Bills, maintenance, property tax, mortgage. It's a money pit. Never forget that. A house is a place to live, not an investment. Admire people who earn more than you, not people who spend more than you do. We live in a consumer-driven, capitalist society. The cynic in me thinks it's one where social media influencers exploit their viewers' cognitive biases for their own gain. We see the influencers with huge followings posting pics of their perfect life, the cars, the houses, the watches, the holidays, all the time, surreptitiously pushing products and the fallacy of their dream life. They want you to spend money on whatever they've just been paid to promote. Simple as that. Spending doesn't make you wealthy. In fact, it does the opposite. Try frugality instead. It's simply wanting what you already have, and given you already have a lot, you can afford to be frugal. It's a surefire way to happiness. And with that approach, you free yourself from the chains of keeping up with the Joneses. Admire people who earn more than you, not people who spend more than you do. Your is lying to you about how much you can afford. People selling stuff often only get paid when you buy something. The more money you spend, the more they get paid. That's the way of the world, and that's okay. But understand that this is a conflict of interest, theirs over yours. They want you to take the highest possible for two reasons. First is that they will get paid more money, and the second is that it keeps inflating so that future will need to obtain even bigger to purchase those ever increasing in value, and that will generate even more money for them. Your is lying to you about how much you can afford. Financial success is 5% intelligence and 95% discipline. If you want to win at something, you have to do the things that the losers don't do. When it comes to investing, this is simple, but not easy. If it was easy, everyone would do it, but they don't. And what is it? Nothing. That's it. Do nothing. Most private investors lose money because they do these three things repeatedly. They're not sufficiently diversified, they buy high and sell low, and they trade too often. Do the opposite. Be sufficiently diversified, be in the market, and don't trade unless you need to. It's time in the market, not timing the market, that's important. You don't need to be a maths wizard to make good money decisions. You just need to behave yourself. Financial success is 5% intelligence and 95% discipline. A raise in income shouldn't mean a raise in lifestyle. You can only spend your money once. Yes, you can always make more, but once you've spent it, you don't get to spend it again. So when your income goes up, it shouldn't mean you just spend more. Instead, think about deferring the spending. Don't spend it today when your income is higher, so that you can spend it in the future when your income is lower, like in retirement. This is also known as saving, but I prefer deferred spending. The reason is that saving is just building up a pot of money. Deferred spending reminds us that there's a plan to spend this money, just not yet. A raise in income shouldn't mean a raise in lifestyle. Forecasting is for the weather. Niels Bohr, the grandfather of quantum physics, once said, prediction is very difficult, especially if it's about the future. It's not about being right today, it's about being less wrong tomorrow. Air pilots know this. For years, every time I met one, I would ask two questions. The first was, do you prepare a flight plan for every single flight? And every pilot I've ever asked has always answered yes. The second was, how often does the flight go exactly as you planned? To which they always answer, never. This should come as no surprise. The flight always differs from the plan because life is unpredictable, and no matter how hard we try, we never have all the information we need about the future before we start. Thinking about what we are trying to do when we create a financial plan that might span 30 years or more. We have to guess about rates of return, inflation, taxes, goals, a date of death, and so on and so on. There's no way to get that 100% right. In fact, the only thing we know for sure about any good financial plan is the moment we finish designing it, it's wrong. We just don't know exactly how yet. So instead of being worried about getting everything right, We do the best we can to create a plan, and then we accept the reality that the financial plans are worthless without the ongoing process of planning. It's the course corrections over time that allow us to narrow down the potential range of outcomes and reach our goal. Real financial planning is a process, not an event. Predictions are ludicrous. Forecasting is for the weather. Fees erode performance. Performance is what's left after investment fees have been deducted. A 1% reduction in investment fees is a definite 1% increase in return, irrespective of what the market does. If investment fees are 2%, then the investment returns will need to be more than 2% to get any sort of return. The higher the fee, the higher the return that's needed to keep your investments going up. And when the market goes down, which it inevitably will, fees will still be taken. They will eat into what's left. Returns will need to be even higher in the future to counter the impact of those fees. Fees erode performance. Never reach for yield. Higher yield on bonds means two things: lower credit worthiness and or longer duration to maturity. The higher yield is required to reward investors for taking the additional risk. Remember, risk and return are related, and there's no such thing as a free lunch. But stocks will beat bonds over the long term. They're higher risk and so come with a higher expected return. Stocks and shares should be used to deliver long-term returns and low yield in bonds to reduce volatility. Understanding the differing roles of equities and fixed income in your portfolio is essential. Never reach for yield. There is an inverse relationship between investment performance and the time spent watching financial news. Can you remember a time when you read or heard something about money in the news, you acted on it, and then, with the benefit in hindsight, you were glad you did? No, me neither. I've only met one person who could. It was a change in the tax rules that they acted on. That's it. Isn't that interesting? Think of all the financial pornography out there. The Sunday papers, the Saturday supplements, scrolling news, websites, blah, blah, blah. Noise. Almost all of it noise. Almost none of it is actionable. Once in a while, there may be a little, tiny speck of information that might be useful, but you'd have to wade through a plethora of rubbish to find it. This leads to one obvious question. Why are we paying attention to the noise in the first place? It might be fun if you're into that kind of thing, like going to the circus, but most likely it's just a waste of time. What if, instead of obsessing over money porn, you use that time to work on that list you have? The list. The one that has all the really important things you actually want to do with your time. Doesn't that sound so much better than spending another hour watching the financial news? There's an inverse relationship between investment performance and time spent watching financial news. Don't pay interest to acquire something that loses value. Using money you haven't yet earned to buy something that will be worth less when you finally pay for it is crazy. You're paying more than the asking price to, eventually, buy something worth a lot less. That's a double whammy. You get hit twice, once on the way in and again on the way out. Instead, defer your spending until you've got enough to make the purchase outright. Do this and two things will happen. Firstly, you won't be paying any interest. Secondly, you'll shop around and pay the least amount of money, because it's currently sat in your account and you can choose to spend it on whatever you want. If not all on this, then there's some left over to spend on something else. Don't pay interest to acquire something that loses value. You don't have to be rich to invest, but you do have to invest to be rich. If you've got £100 spare, you can put it in the bank or in a shoebox under your bed, but it will lose value to inflation. This is just a fancy way of saying that £100 won't buy as much stuff next year because next year prices will inevitably be higher. So what's the alternative? Invest it in the stock market for the long term. Here's why. On any given day, the stock market represents the collective feelings of all investors, and it can be a wild ride day to day. But over the longer term, these short-term fluctuations in emotion get flattened out. And what you're left with is the result of collective rationality. The stock market is not like gravity or even the weather. It doesn't follow set laws, but it does have some pretty good rules of thumb. The basic facts have remained the same. Over time, think 10, 15, 20 years plus, stocks typically do better than bonds, and bonds typically do better than cash. Low expenses are typically a good sign of future relative performance. We also know that a diversified portfolio will help protect you from the variability of the stock market. Low expenses are typically a good sign of future relative performance. We also know that a diversified portfolio will help protect you from the variability of the stock market. Rich investors know this. Now you know it too. Use it to your advantage. You don't have to be rich to invest in the stock market, but you do have to invest to be rich. Invest in your mind and your skills first. You only bring 3 things to the world: your life force, and that's made up of your time, your energy, and your ability. And when you work, you exchange one or more of these 3 things for money. But rather than exchange your time, energy, and ability for money, you will lead a much more fulfilling life if you exchange them for meaning. So if you use some of your time and energy to improve your ability, you can make more money, but more importantly, live a life with more meaning and more happiness. So invest in your mind and your skills first. Infrequent splurges bring the greatest happiness. We don't know when to stop. Ever eat too much, like a full packet of Jaffa cakes? I have, the whole lot, and yes, I know that's bad. Jaffa cake 1, best thing in the world, ever. Jaffa cakes 2 to 5, really good. Jaffas 6 to 10, good. Jaffas 11, 12, meh. The rest of the Jaffas, okay, now I feel sick. I learned this lesson the first time I ate a packet of Jaffa cakes in one go. We all learn this lesson, and yet for some reason, we still occasionally repeat the experiment. Of course, this phenomena doesn't only occur with Jaffa cakes. This is a well-documented economic principle called marginal utility. And you guessed it, it applies to money too. Beyond a certain point, having more money will not lead to more security, freedom and happiness. And this works on repeated spending too. Because security, freedom and happiness do not come from more money, at least not beyond a certain point, they come from knowing when to stop spending. If a splurge happens so often it becomes normal, then it stops being fun. Instead, try delaying spending to increase gratification and enjoyment. Infrequent splurges bring the greatest happiness. Your life is a better benchmark than the S&P 500. Once you've paid all your bills, there's only 3 things you can do with money. Spend it on having fun today, invest it so you can spend it on having fun tomorrow, or give it away. There's nothing else you can do with it. So rather than looking at the value of your investments as the thing, start thinking about what the value of your investments will enable you to do today or in the future, or will enable someone you love to do today or in the future. There are no pockets in a shroud. You can't take it with you. Don't be the richest person in the graveyard. When it comes to personal finance, what matters is not beating some index. What matters is meeting your goals. Your life is a better benchmark than the S&P 500. Compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. Set yourself up to benefit from it, not battle against it. If an investment goes up 10%, it's gone from 100% at the start to 110%. If that same investment goes up another 10%, it goes from 110% up to 121%. 10% of 110 is 11. So if an investment goes up by 10% and then goes up by another 10%, it's gone up by 21%, not 2 lots of 10%, i.e. 20%. That's compounding. In the first year, you get the growth on the money. In the second year, you get the growth on the money again and the growth on the growth. And the next year, you get the growth on the money still and the growth on the growth and the growth on the growth on the growth. This just keeps on going. The longer you leave it, the more growth on the growth adds up. All you need is discipline and time. Compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world. Set yourself up to benefit from it, not battle against it. A penny saved is more than a penny earned. If you can cut your expenses by £10, that's an extra £10 you get to spend elsewhere. But where has that £10 come from? It's come from your income, but you've had to spend time to make that money. And like money, you only get to spend time once. So reducing what you spend is a way of reducing the time you have to spend making money in the future. Time you can spend doing something more fulfilling than making money. A penny saved is more than a penny earned. If you're excited about an investment, it's probably a bad idea. There's a difference between speculating and investing, and it pays to know what the difference is. Speculating is exciting, full of breathtaking ups and downs. If you chart it over time, it looks like a heartbeat, probably an elevated one. Investing, on the other hand, is slow and boring. In the short term, you may have some ups and downs, but if you chart investing over many years of time, it looks like a long, slow curve upwards. Speculating is like a Vegas casino. Investing is like watching grass grow. Know which game you're playing. If you're excited about an investment, it's probably a bad idea. Market corrections come more regularly than birthdays. Expect them. The markets go up, the markets go down. Here's a neat way to think about that. Imagine it's a very still day and you're in a boat on the ocean. There's no wind, there's no swell, the water is as flat as a mirror. The calm goes on just long enough for you to start to feel like it's normal. When a small wave finally comes, it feels big. When a regular wave comes, it feels huge. As scary as it might feel, it's important to remember that waves are normal. In fact, storms are normal. I'll go one step further. Storms should be expected. But the very last item on the long list of things you should do in a boat in a storm is abandon ship. The ocean is almost never flat calm. Neither is investing. Market corrections come more regularly than birthdays. You should expect them.